Hey guys, and welcome to my Aurelion Soul Guide. This one is only going to be a short one since he hasn't been out long enough to make a full in-depth guide on him, but overall Soul is a scaling mage with a somewhat weak early game, but he has really great wave clear and team fighting in order to make up for this. For runes, there are two main choices, which are First Strike and Spellbook. I'm kind of the opinion that First Strike is better most of the time, but you might want to swap out to Spellbook against Assassins so you can take combat summoners, or you might also prefer Spellbook versus some of the longer range mages since it can be kind of difficult to use First Strike against them anyway. And for your secondaries, you can take AP scaling, like Absolute Focus and Gathering Storm, or you can take Resolve scaling, like Conditioning Overgrowth, just depending on if you want more damage or more tankiness. I guess if the lane were really hard as well, you could take something like Second Wind in Resolve, but I think try avoid it. I don't think you need it most of the time, at least if you're building Catalyst early on. For items, most of the time you'll want to go down one of these paths here, depending on whether or not you want tier in your build. Both builds are very viable, and the most important thing is just that you get Rod and Rylai's ASAP. If you find yourself running out of mana, you might also just prefer the tier build, and it can also be worth swapping to Mana Flow in your runes. Another thing worth mentioning is there is a Liandry's build that's being experimented with. Personally, I just don't have enough games on this to really say if it's good or not. I think that it probably is more damage overall, but it's definitely going to be more difficult to play because like you're not going to have Catalyst for the early game, which could make your lane kind of difficult. But it could mean that like it's easier just to hit that kind of point where you can just wave clear and then ignore really playing the lane overall. So it's definitely something that's worth trying. I just can't really say for sure whether it's the best or not, which is why, you know, this is only a short guide and not an in-depth guide. For your skill order, you're just going to want to max Q, then E, then W, and put points in R whenever you're able to. You should look to start E because you're going to need it pretty early in order to start getting stacks, and also just starting Q early doesn't really do a whole lot. I guess you can use it to kind of defensively trade, but honestly, I just don't really like it that much when you start it. For your sums, 99% of the time, you probably just want to go to Flash TP. Sometimes you can take something like Flash Exhaust, especially if you're going Spellbook, because it'll just make you tankier, and it's difficult for Assassin champs to deal with you when you go that, but like Flash TP is definitely better if you can get away with it. Just allows you to keep farming really nicely. So for laning, in your early lane as ASOL, you want to play pretty defensively and mainly just set up creeps so they can be last hit with your E, which will obviously allow you to stack up pretty quickly. As you get to your first base and more points in Q, you eventually reach a point where you can just EQ waves, and there isn't a whole lot people can do to stop you from wave clearing. Some champions can cancel your Q, like Syndra Stun for example, which can be annoying, but most champs won't be able to do this. And your main goal is just to get as many stacks as you can. The ideal would probably be like 10 stacks per minute, but obviously it's more difficult earlier and it gets easier later on. And it can depend on your matchup too. Like if you're in a difficult matchup, you can't really expect to get that. Q can be a pretty decent tool for trading defensively, and after level 6, if your opponent does waste some key cooldowns, you can sometimes just W forward onto them and look for some sort of punish with your Q damage. Be a bit careful spamming E and Q on the wave all the time because it does cost a lot of mana early, and it'll also make you vulnerable to getting punished while you're on cooldown. So try use your autos to set up the wave, and then when it's low you can quickly kill it with E and Q without a huge time investment. Team fighting as ASOL is pretty unique. You want to be looking for opportunities to get big AoE with your E and your R, while also looking for ways to W forward and chase people with Q. I normally find it easier to start the fight using E and R, and once some of the cooldowns are used, I look to start getting aggressive with Q. If you see people isolated in the fight, you can normally take 1v1s with them as well. The main point is just really try not to W too far forward or to get cancelled off your W because you'll lose a significant amount of DPS from that. And in the mid game, you want to keep stacking up as much as possible. It should be really easy to farm sideways at this point because you can pretty much just EQ and one-shot the whole wave. It's also really worth looking for jungle camps when you can. ASOL is definitely one of the better champs at doing jungle camps, so if you notice your jungler's on the other side of the map, or if you have enough side lane priority that you can look to invade their jungle, just go in and try steal some of those camps away. So guys, that's going to be it for this short video on Aurelion Soul. Obviously, you probably have a lot of questions because we didn't cover a ton of stuff in this video, so please feel free to leave that in the comment section below. I'll probably make the full in-depth guide on ASOL, and I'm guessing like 2 or 3 weeks. Just by that point, there should be a lot more kind of data around it, just in terms of like, you know, ASOL will be played in pro play by that point. We'll kind of know what the, you know, the top pro players think the best build is. There might also be like a little bit of innovation, like perhaps Liandry's does end up just like being the best build. Perhaps it's situational, like maybe you go Roa versus like Assassins where you need the tankiness, and maybe you go Liandry's versus everything else, you know, sort of similar to how Cassier does. So yeah, there's still just like a lot up in the air, and I don't want to come out and say that I know everything about the champ because I don't. And I think it's important though that you still have like some sort of idea to play the champ, which is why I'm making this guide. I don't want to make you guys wait forever, but yeah, I just don't want to make the full one yet. But that's going to be it for this video. If you did like it, go ahead and like and subscribe. I'll see you next time.